giving feedback is goal orientated. So when you're going to give feedback, you need to know what's the goal or output that you're requiring from the feedback. And I did touch on this earlier. Feedback, telling somebody what they've done wrong is useless unless you help them put it right. Okay? And in the feedback session, it should always be ended with kind of a question, which we'll come on to. It's kind of number 7 at the end of this, right? Which is, so how are we going to correct the behaviour going forward? Because nobody's going to like you telling them what they're doing wrong. They will like it more if you help them try and put it right going forward. So before you give feedback, what's the goal of the feedback? Okay? If the goal is so you feel better, that's one of the wrong reasons for giving feedback. Remember, that's not a feedback session. That's a I need to feel better, so I'm going to shout at you session. Yeah? And if there's any parents on the call today, I'm sure you've all done this. Yeah? You know, there's been times when you've shouted at your children, whereas actually giving them some more effective feedback would probably have been better, but you felt annoyed at the time, so you've told them off or whatever it may be. It works exactly the same in the commercial arena in businesses. Okay, so think about what's the goal and then what's the required change of behaviour going forward. What action needs to be taken on the back of the feedback that you're giving them, because otherwise the feedback is mute. So think about times in your career where you've told somebody 3 times to do something and they're still not doing it. That tells you that the feedback sessions you're doing aren't being effective. They're not effective at the moment. What you're doing is just probably making yourself feel better by giving the feedback, unless of course that person is purposely ignoring your feedback. Which of course then is a different conversation at that point. It probably ceases to be a feedback conversation and then maybe turns into a conversation about performance, which again is a different thing. Okay, performance review is very different to giving somebody feedback. We've got a comment from Aaron here. Some people when getting feedback go blank and when asked what they're going to do to change this can't answer. Always good to have a simple idea that they can develop further. Do you agree? Yes, I do agree, Aaron. I've also got a little tip for you on that as well. So I do agree that if you have a pre-thought out goal about what output or change of behaviour in your head before giving the feedback is useful, because if they do go blank, you can then make some suggestions potentially on how they can correct that going forward. And if they go blank, they've either gone into flight or freeze, by the way, at that point. Okay. The other thing to do as well is the only danger if you give somebody advice on how to change their behaviour, it's come from you and not them, so they might be slightly less bought into it. So if they do go blank or they do stutter or they can't think, what I would suggest is just suspend the feedback session and ask them a question, which will come on to the end. At the end, a question like, so how could you do things differently going forward? You don't have to answer that right now. Have a think about it and let's pick it up tomorrow or the day after. What you do at that point is you just take the pressure right off them at that point and you allow them to go away and have a think about it. You probably allow their emotions to start bubbling down as well rather than up, so you can just take the pressure off, ask them a question, give them a bit of time to think about it, of course, unless it's business or health and safety critical, and then to be honest, you wouldn't really give people feedback. So if something is business or health and safety critical and somebody's doing something wrong, you don't sit down and give them feedback in a timely manner, just tell them what to do. So if the fire alarm goes off and somebody goes, oh, do you know what, I know everybody's got to leave the building, but I'm too busy, I'm staying here. Don't sit them down and go, well, how could we correct that behaviour? Because what are all the downsides of that? No. Fire alarm's going off, you get out. Yeah? So you got to, again, there's a time and a place for feedback. Business critical, health and safety critical, no. After the fact, absolutely time for feedback at that point. So yes, Aaron, you can suggest some behaviours to help people move forward, but if you don't want to do that, you can also ask a question and maybe just suspend at that point, let somebody go away and have a think. Hopefully that's useful and answers your question, Aaron. Okay, so number 2, have goals for what you're trying to achieve, not just feedback, but also the behaviour afterwards. Okay? Be specific. Just make sure. Oops, there we go. Yeah. Be specific, as we've already said. Okay.